General Jones, Donald Trump has often voiced his discomfort, if not disdain, for NATO. And now the latest reports are that the administration is considering not having a U.S. four-star in the NATO command structure. What's your take on that development, if it occurs?
Well, I think it would be a cataclysmic mistake, to be perfectly honest. I think the transatlantic alliance has served us well since the end of World War II, just about. The American leadership and the presence of American forces in post-war Europe is something that enabled us to get through the Cold War with such a great ending, at least in my view, where countries from the Warsaw Pact nations are now members of NATO. When I served in NATO, we had 19 countries when I got there, 26 when I left. And especially now with the Russian invasion of Ukraine has really galvanized the Europeans in such a way they feel threatened again, much as they did during the Cold War. So I think that American leadership and commitment to our friends and allies is probably more important now than it has been any time since the end of the Cold War. The defense of Europe is a valid strategic concept that we have to pay attention to. And I think that any significant reduction of American commitment to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and over 30 countries now as members of NATO would be giving up quite a bit of responsibilities, and strategically would be a big mistake.
How important is NATO for the projection of American power into the Middle East and the military bases that we have in Germany, for example? If we surrender all that, what happens to the American ability to project its power around the globe?
You know, years ago when I was the commander of the U.S. European Command and Supreme Allied Commander of NATO from 2003 to the end of 2006, I had some strong discussions with the then Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld. Secretary Rumsfeld did not want to surrender the control, or didn't want to ask permission from Germany, for example, if we wanted to deploy our troops into Iraq in 2003. And his solution was seriously discussed was, well, we'll just bring our troops home. And like that, you know, I don't have to ask permission. So the answer to that was, you can do that, but if you pull your troops back home, you're going to create vacuums. Vacuums are going to be filled by people that don't share our national interest, and you'll be probably deploying troops more frequently to fight somewhere in the world because you don't have that forward presence. We reached a tentative agreement on the fact that we could reduce some of the permanent-based troops in Europe, but since the defense of Europe was going to be moving to the east, from the Baltics to the Adriatic and the Balkans and the Black Sea countries, you know, it seemed that he was agreeable to deploy rotational troops. And that's what happened over time. It didn't happen immediately because the Iraq War started and it was shelved for a while, but after about 7 or 8 years ago, we started regular deployments of our troops into Eastern Europe, and that's where they are today. This is a good thing. This is a deterrent factor for Russia to not go beyond what it's doing in Ukraine. But if you travel to Europe today, Eastern, Central, and Eastern Europe, you'll find a great deal of angst about what Russia is really up to, and now what the U.S. is really up to in terms of its commitment to the alliance and NATO itself. I think the president was right in pointing out that the Europeans need to do more. Certainly more resources, more contribution. This 2% of GDP for defense was agreed to before I even got to NATO in the 2002 conference, NATO conference. They all agreed, 19 countries agreed to 2%, but very few of them did it. And it went on like that for every so often when the North Atlantic Treaty Organization met at presidential level, head of state level, everybody agreed to do 2%, but very few people did it. So he was right. President Trump was right in his first term of making that an issue. But what has also happened for NATO, in addition to expanding in terms of the numbers of members, is they have kicked in quite a bit of money, and they have kicked in more resources. And there are fewer countries now that are short of the 2%. And now we've raised it to 5%. Well, we don't do 5% yet.
Should we be doing 5%? Because we are actually historically seen as a percentage of GDP, the defense budget is actually lower than it has been for many decades.
Exactly. Personally, I'm a big believer in our forward-basing concept. It's proven to be a success over the years, and I think it will be a success as we face more threats from this new alliance of China, North Korea, Iran, and Russia, which is a formidable challenge for us. It is not something that we can handle alone, and all the more reason why I think the transatlantic link, the fact that the Europeans are listening to what our policies are and are reacting very quickly towards doing more themselves, but that doesn't mean that they'll be better off without us or that we will be better off without them.
You mentioned Iran. The Trump administration right now has embarked upon a campaign in Yemen to attempt to destroy the ability of the Houthis to interfere with shipping, and they have coupled that with both carrots and sticks towards Iran. Mm-hmm. What's your take on Trump's current posture toward Iran? Do you think upping the threats as he has, coupled with an offer of some negotiations, is a good thing?
So on Iran, I think the administration has really got the right message. For too many years during the Biden administration and even the Obama administration, the policies of appeasement towards Iran were proven to be completely ineffective. Iran, the regime, is not one that has shown that it can be trusted to live up to anything they agree to. So, and I think that particularly during the Biden administration, our would-be opponents have concluded that we've become a little bit of a paper tiger. You know, we say things, but we don't live up to them. And I think the exodus from Afghanistan kind of cemented that view in Vladimir Putin's mind and the regime in Iran, North Korea, maybe even China. But we certainly did not live up to a lot of the things that we said we would do. And this policy of appeasement towards Iran has been a cataclysmic failure, I think. And so I think President Trump and his team have been been clear. Yet another president has said that we will not allow Iran to develop a nuclear weapon. Every president in the last 20 years has said the same thing. I think they would be making a mistake if they didn't believe President Trump. And I think he's done the right thing to say, here's an opportunity to, get rid of your nuclear program in a way that satisfies the watching world. And if you do that, things will be different. But if you don't, the result is going to be the same. You're just not going to like what's going to happen. And I think that's the message. I think that's what you have to do to get the regime and to get that particular regime, which is on its heels right now. 2025 can be the year, I think, when the people of Iran finally rise up at the same time that we deal with their nuclear programs. And I don't think we need to do this alone. I think there are quite a few countries that would participate in this. And I think the possibility of bringing a degree of peace in the Middle East as a result of that, where Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah are all on their heels, is something that we should recognize might not happen again if we miss this opportunity. So I on that score, I think the administration is sending the right message, and I think it would be a mistake if Iran did not believe what President Trump has said.
How confident do you feel about the campaign against the Houthis right now? I think Trump, the administration, has indicated it could go on for a month or more. Do you feel that it has a good chance of success?
I do. I think we have overwhelming military power. I think it corrects several years of doubt in the Arab world about our resolve on Iran in particular, but even Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and the whole Yemen problem. I do a fair amount of work in Saudi Arabia, and I know that they're looking for, our Arab friends and allies are looking for reassurance that we are on the right side of the issue here and that we won't let them down, and that when we say we're going to do something, we actually do it. And I think on this, on Iran, what the president has said is actually believable, and I think the chances of success are probably pretty good.
Given the potentially optimistic scenario that you described for 2025, which is predicated on change in Iran, do you think this could be an auspicious year for a wider peace in the Middle East that would include Israel?
I think it's a possibility. It was certainly what Israel has done to defend itself against these, what you could call almost a 3 or 4 pronged attack, has been incredibly successful, and sent a message to the Iranian regime in particular that you should be really careful about what you take on, because you might not like the consequences. I think that one has to play out a little bit more. My take on it is that we should focus on the head of the snake, and that's Tehran, and that's the Iranian government, the regime, because that feeds all of the others, the Hamas and everything else, Hezbollah, Houthis, and I think if you can keep the pressure on, and eventually if you have to deal with them in a kinetic manner to go after their nuclear program, then that's what we have to do. With regard to the Palestinian question, for many years during the Obama administration, we were pursuing a 2-state solution. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been very clear that he's not in favor of a two-state solution. So that doesn't bode well for some sort of resolution between the Palestinians and the Israelis. I used to say we have one leader that's willing but not capable, and the other one that's capable but not willing. And that is still at the core of peace in the Middle East. That's still a core issue that's going to have to be resolved. Iran is probably the most immediate problem that we face in terms of a potential huge change inside that country, where the people, I think, given the opportunity, might rise up and topple the regime.
So you think a kinetic action, as you put it, towards the Iranian nuclear missile facilities or towards developing nuclear weapons could be successful?
Yes. Well, I think not only it could be partially successful. It could retard their efforts by a decade or two, or depending on the accuracy of the intelligence, could possibly take out more than that. But we've said it for several administrations that this is always on the table. It could be that the regime is so insulated and that the supreme leader is captive of people who want to tell him what he wants to hear, that they don't really share my view that they should really listen to what's being said, because I believe President Trump will act, and I hope that we'll act in concert with other friends and allies, if necessary.
Yeah. Let's turn to another area of the world, which is Asia, which has not received the kind of attention that President Trump has devoted to Ukraine and Europe and
Right.
Russia. How do you foresee events developing in Asia? Specifically, China keeps ramping up the pressure on Taiwan. Where do you think that is headed?
So I think that the Chinese leader is watching very closely what happens in the Russia-Ukraine fight. And as a matter of fact, I think globally we're a moment in time when autocracies and democracies are in a contest. And so it's not just Russia and Ukraine, it's not just China. You can pick any number of countries in Africa, even countries on our own hemisphere, where autocratic leaders are watching to see how this ends. Because if the Russia-Ukraine fight ends with Vladimir Putin being reinstated as a global leader, when in fact he's a war criminal, that will have far-reaching effects in different parts of the world, and autocratic leaders will draw a conclusion, rightly so, that the West isn't serious. That eventually they fold, and they're not serious. We're not serious. So, personally, I think that's one set of things that are going on at a very strategic level. People are watching to see how this ends. Autocratic leaders will draw conclusions one way or the other, depending on how the Russia-Ukraine fight ends. And secondly, I think that Taiwan and the South China Sea are two areas where China might decide that they want to test this. I think probably South China Sea would be first, because it's a different region. It's not an invasion of a country or a territory. But I think how Russia-Ukraine ends is going to dictate the behavior of the autocratic countries for a long time to come.
I agree with you, because I think the danger, and I think this is why the Europeans are mobilizing, is that if we allow Russian President Vladimir Putin to swallow Ukraine, he gets the manpower, the resources, and then he turns his attentions to the Baltic states,
Right.
to Poland. He'll become a much more belligerent and bellicose dictator. And the same thing, of course, it would be a green light for China, wouldn't it?
If I were the Chinese leader, I would draw conclusions along those lines. You know, that all they have to do is wait us out, and you know, eventually, you know, we'll crumble, and Vladimir Putin will be once again welcome at the seat among the family of nations as though nothing happened.
So ultimately, it comes down to American leadership, doesn't it?
I think so. And that's why I think, going back to your first question about NATO, that to surrender that leadership would be a big mistake of historical proportions.
General Jones, thank you.
My pleasure.